So Stella has a master's in positive psychology. She founded a project called Ladies Who Launch in New York. For those of you in the startup scene, you'll immediately recognize it. And over the last couple of years, she's been deeply engaged in the idea of using play, positive psychology, and concepts like that to transform the way that people interact, the way that companies engage, and the way that systems work. And many of you may have seen the Whoopa ice cream truck that's sitting outside by the food trucks. You'll have an opportunity to use it tomorrow if you haven't had a chance to use it today. And I guarantee after seeing her, you'll be as enthralled and excited about it as I am. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce Stella Grizont. Clicker's right there. Thanks.
Hi. So my name is Stella, and I am here today to relieve what I call imagination constipation. That's the topic of today's talk. So this actually was inspired by a personal story, which happened about a year ago in New York City, which is where I used to live. I was in my studio apartment, 400 square feet, not a lot of natural light, and I had just finished my first quarter in business, and it was awesome. So we had new clients like Google and Aramark Foods and cool startups, and we were featured in MSNBC, and it was great, except for the fact that they wanted more. And I had to accelerate my business plan like by 24 months, and I had no idea how to do it. And so that's what I was doing that night. And I was banging my head against the wall, and I was trying to figure out how to create new experiences fast enough, scalable enough, and I was getting stuck. I was, instead of thinking big, thinking smaller, and I was beginning to go down this downward spiral. Have you guys ever been there? Okay. So I was feeling just paralyzed with fear of losing it all, and essentially like losing my mind in that moment, because I was just like so in that zone. But thankfully, I found a way out, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So what is imagination constipation? Well, it's a condition when one's creativity is constrained. Creativity being how we see new ideas, how we see new possibilities, how we see solutions that didn't exist before. So when we're experiencing imagination constipation, we're essentially feeling stuck because we're not seeing the whole picture. Oops. So what are the symptoms of imagination constipation? Well, we'll just go right there. So what are the symptoms of imagination constipation? Well, have you ever been in a bad relationship just a little too long? I was expecting to see more hands. Okay. Have you ever procrastinated to the point of self-sabotage? Okay. And have you ever found yourself in like the same mess that you've been in before, asking, how the F have I landed here again? Yes, those are all symptoms of imagination constipation. And I've categorized them into three different areas. The first one is, it feels too big. I'm so overwhelmed with the challenge that I just can't do it right now, and I have to come back later. The second symptom is lots of strain, but no gain. This is when you're spinning your wheels and you're not getting that output that you want. You're not getting a different type of answer to your problems. And the last is no desire to go. This is kind of the worst of all. It's kind of when it gets chronic, when you know something has to happen, but you just don't feel it. You don't feel like it. So what are the causes of imagination constipation? Well, a lot of times when we experience it, we tend to look to others. We tend to look and blame other people, blame other events, or just call it plain bad luck. But what I would say it is, most of the time, is that it's not about other people, it's not about other events, it's not about bad luck, it's about you and holding on to something that's no longer working. It's about not letting go. And so what are we not letting go of? Beliefs, expectations, rules. This is how it should be. This is how it was supposed to be. This is what she should do. So how do we let go? Well, the cool thing about this is that we all have within us a natural laxative to this condition called imagination constipation. After studying positive psychology, after working with creatives in advertising for 10 years, after working with over 1,200 women-owned startups in New York City, I have found that the #1 way to expand your vision, to energize, to see bigger, to motivate, the #1 way that I found to get that is through play. Play essentially is a practice of letting go. Play is about stepping into the unknown, dancing with it, and having a good time. It is about feeling so good in the moment that you cannot even think about what just happened yesterday or 10 years ago, and you don't give a shit about what's ahead of you. You are here and now. And I don't have to tell this room that we are hardwired for play, right? We need play like we need to eat and sleep and dream. It is critical for our well-being. When we talk about well-being and positive psychology, we measure it across these 5 elements, also known as PERMA. And the reason why we use these 5 elements is because well-being is not just one thing. It consists of many things. Just like weather, we don't just call weather one thing. We think about humidity, we think about temperature, we think about barometric pressure. So we use these elements to measure well-being. So positive emotion, zest, serenity, appreciation, love. We talk about engagement, which we've been talking about all day, being in flow, being in the zone, relationships, because people really matter. Meaning, belonging to something bigger than yourself, and accomplishments, having that sense of mastery. What's so cool about play is that it's not just engagement alone, it always happens with positive emotion. We can motivate change through engagement, but we can't play without it feeling good. So as adults, I would say we don't play enough. We have a lot of games, but we don't get enough play. And what's the main difference between games and play? Well, it's many things, and that's like a whole nother conference in itself. But here are the main differences. Play is not about winning or progress. It's about discovery and exploration. Play is not about structure. It's about freedom. Play is not about what's next. It's about what's now. And play, this is the big one, is not an activity. It is a state of mind. So that's where my company comes in, and that's why I founded Whoopa. To help grown-ups get into the play state of mind. At Whoopa, we design in-person, immersive experiences to help grown-ups, like all of us, let go of those creative constraints and release our most awesome self. And this results in higher productivity, more creativity at work, more engagement, more happiness, more connection. So how do we do it? How do we create a play state of mind at Whoopa? Well, here's a roadmap, and hopefully it's easy to remember. P. P is for permission, giving yourself first permission to play, saying, I'm not going to be serious right now. The second thing we do is we ask you to lose the judgment. There is no right or wrong in play. There is no good or bad. The next thing we do is we ask you to acknowledge the tension. Because when you're in a process of letting go, there's bound to be resistance, and that's okay. Just acknowledge it. And the last thing we do is we ask you to say yes. Say yes to it all and build on it and say yes again. So one example of how we do this at WUPA is one of our experiences is called Splash Outside the Lines. And so it's literally, we call it a release chamber. We have a white room. We put on these white funny suits. And we pack it up with people with nothing but whiteness and buckets of paint. And at first, we gave them paintbrushes. But what we found is that people became obsessed with doing something beautiful or something cool or something artsy. And so we took away those paintbrushes because we're like, this is not about being an artist. It's about being creative without constraints. And so splash it, use food to make your color all over the walls, and then build on what someone just did. And so what we have is iterative creativity in the moment, happening live, unleashed. So that's one example of how we do it at WUPA. How did I do it that night in my apartment when I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown? Well, I gave myself permission. So I gave myself permission to not be so serious and worried that I was going to like lose it all and lose my business and be a big failure. L, I let go of judgment. So just because I study the science of happiness doesn't mean I have to be fucking happy all the time. A, I acknowledged where I was at, which was full of tension and just so like wound up that all I wanted to do was scream. And Y is I said yes. I said yes and I screamed my heart out in my little apartment. And I banged some pillows and no one called the cops. And in 2 minutes, I emerged a new woman. I felt 20 pounds lighter. I felt giddy. I was like laughing. I felt ready to take it on. I felt ready to say yes to everything. I just could see things that I wasn't seeing. And that was just 2 minutes. So I called all my friends and I was like, am I crazy? Have you ever wanted to scream? And they said, hell yes. And so I said yes one more time and I said, this just needs to happen. I just need to create a space for people to let go, to know it's okay, to know it's important to their process. And so I created something called the ice cream truck, which is outside, as an experiment. And I learned how to drive a truck in heels. And I went from like Wall Street to Midtown Manhattan, just giving people free opportunities to try it out. We created an audio experience inside, so it facilitates you through a process. And we found we struck a nerve, literally and figuratively. And so we brought it into WUPA, and now companies bring us on as a well-being tool to regularly allow their employees an opportunity to let off steam and come back feeling refreshed and energized at work. So that's the most recent design. So in conclusion, if you feel yourself getting into the state of imagination constipation, the first thing you want to do is ask yourself, is there anything I'm holding on to that's no longer working? Is there something that I can let go of here? And then give yourself permission. Stop judging yourself. Acknowledge what you're feeling. And then just say yes to whatever comes up. I leave you on this final Zen proverb. It says, let go or be dragged. And I invite you guys to choose the route that's more fun. Thank you very much, and hopefully see you outside soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. Was I right? You can't help but feel so happy when you see Stella up here talking. Always so inspirational. Thank you so much. And, you know,